heard a quote or read a quote by Ben Franklin that really sticks with me now. That it's, if you would not be forgotten as soon as you're dead and rotten, then either write something worth reading or do something worth writing about.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, where I interview thoughtful, inspiring, and influential guests who are changing the way we think about what is possible in our lives, especially as we age. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, psychotherapist and fellow Zestful Ager, and I really want to hear from you, my listeners. Please leave me a comment on zestfulaging.com. I really do read everyone, and I so appreciate your feedback. Our music is courtesy of Judy Banker. She was a guest on Zestful Aging, and her CD Buffalo Motel is out, and you can find out more about her and her beautiful music on judybanker.com. I know that everyone is feeling really stressed and anxious right now. We're all unsettled and feel out of control. So I created a free download for you for maintaining mental health based on my 30 years as a psychotherapist. Just go to zestfulaging.com and it is all yours. Well, I've got my little Jack Russell Sparky. He's totally sacked out right now, but he's beside me, so let's begin. We have a really interesting interview for you today. I'm going to be talking to Aaron Gendle, and he's the best-selling author of Conquest, 10 Simple Steps to Conquer Life and Leave a Lasting Legacy. Aaron founded Write a Book University, where he helps others tell their story and leave their legacy by writing a book. And he also has his own podcast. It's called Daily Authors Podcast, where he interviews brilliant new self-help authors daily, providing a platform for authors to share their stories and help others. I'm really excited to talk to him today. He overcame a chronic disease naturally without using medication, and then he went on to finish the Ultra Beast Spartan race. We have to find out more about that. And he lives in Florida with his wife and children. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Hey, thank you so much, Nicole. I appreciate it.
So have you been training already this morning?
Have I been training for my fitness?
Yeah.
I actually had a late flight that got canceled last night and had to get 5 hours of sleep and flew in this morning. So unfortunately, no, but I usually would have gotten that in already.
Yeah, I see. It sounds like that's a really big part of your life. So tell me about this whole idea of leaving a legacy, which, as you probably know, is a really important element in aging well and being satisfied as a person, middle age or over. Tell me about legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is a big part of who I am now, what I try to help others realize. I think at the end of the day, we all want to be remembered and we all want to have an impact somehow. And I don't think you're ever too young and you're never too old to really be thinking about that. It's never too early or never too late. And how I got started and how it really hit home for me was when I did get diagnosed with a chronic disease that really just sent me into a whirlwind and just the emotions that I went through to go through that experience. And on the other side of that, though, and I think this is true for a lot of what we might call failures or problems that we run into our life. On the other side of that was a lot of great things, and I've been able to help a lot of people, not only with this disease, but in thinking about legacy. And it really started when I started getting symptoms of this disease, and it's called Crohn's, and it's a chronic bowel disease that can be pretty debilitating. That I had decided at one point, I had a young family, that I didn't want to go the traditional route with medicine. I was already very fit and healthy. I thought, what was going on in my life? I had to take a step back and say, hey, what wasn't working? And I knew that I had to find another way to live my life how I was living before, even better. And so I did that. I did a ton of research, did just a ton of, I had to believe that it was really possible. And at the end of the day, I was able to use very holistic practices and found doctors that supported that, and was able to heal myself in a way that not many others have. And 5 years later, I've been 99% symptom free, and I'm able to run, like you mentioned, some of the Spartan races that I do. And as I got better, I really figured out that this information was very valuable. And even when it came to the disease, I have 4 kids, and I thought, hey, what was to be of them if they didn't hear this information, or if it wasn't something that later in life they may be going through this same experience, because it is said that this is genetic and potentially can run in the family, right? So I thought, man, I have to record this and write it down, and if it can help them later. And then it became, well, how many other people can I help with this? And really, as I was going through that, I heard a quote, or read a quote by Ben Franklin that really sticks with me now. That it's, if you would not be forgotten as soon as you're dead and rotten, then either write something worth reading or do something worth writing about. And I really love that quote. I like to combine the two. I say not just or, I say do both, right? Do something amazing with your life that others can write about, and also write. And that's why I try to help people write a book. And ultimately, I believe a big part of a legacy is recording what you've done in your life that's helped maybe you, whether that's something you've overcome, maybe even professionally, but that can really help others and, leave that behind after we're gone. Because I really do believe that books are something that will last forever.
Mm-hmm. So had you been a big reader before you started getting sick?
So I started doing more of that, and I got more into self-development, and I really didn't come from that spot, though. I came, I actually have a mathematics background and computer background, and I guess that's another part of my story. Really don't have to come from that place of being a writer to write a book, to share your story.
I think that's a really important point, because many people do want to write, but they really feel like, well, I don't know how to do it. It's so daunting, and no one's going to want to read my stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of fears and really myths, I think, around writing a book, and we see these books in the bookstores and they look beautiful, and of course many people have spent a lot of time to put these amazing books together. But I also believe there's a trend now towards self-publishing and a way to get your book out there quickly. It doesn't have to take 2 or 3 or 10 years. It really can be something you can get done in a few months. And maybe you spend a little more time to try to market that if you want. But it depends on what your goals are for that. And a book, a lot of people think you have to write a 300, 400, 500 page book. But there's books out in categories, even on Amazon, which is the largest bookstore in the world, that are 50 pages long, right? And so you can write something. I think my book was around 150 pages. So it's not like it was something that everybody else couldn't do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're really advocating for people who have important things to say, as I think we all do, because we all have a story. And if you've gotten to middle age, life has, done its number, and sometimes there's some pretty tough experiences to overcome. And it sounds like you're saying there's a lot everybody can offer, and it's important to put it out there so others can benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you mentioned in the intro, I interview authors every single day, and I've spoken to several of them who even wrote a book really because they had a loved one, like their father or mother, that they have these fond memories of. They one woman in particular wrote her book and remembered her father playing all this wonderful music for her as she was a child and throughout their experiences and their relationship together. And he had recently passed, a year or two ago. And she told me that it was one of the biggest, biggest things that she wished he would have left behind was his music, because as they went through his stuff, they could find maybe one song of his in all the years and years of him creating music and leaving that behind. There wasn't any recordings or any of that. So it was all lost. And they really remember him by that stuff, and it really touched their hearts. But now it's not there anymore.
I see. So I think what you're saying is it's important to be intentional about where your life has brought you and what you can share with others. Am I understanding that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all need to get over a lot of us need to get over the fear of believing that we don't have anything to offer, because as you mentioned, especially if you've gone through middle age, and I'm in my middle age, I think we've all had things happen in our lives, and even as a young person, I still believe there's many things that young people experience, but as for sure as we get older, hey, we experienced loss in relationships. We might have experienced a loss in a family member. Maybe someone's gotten sick, and maybe it's not happened to you, but you've gone through it, and so you can portray what that might have felt like and maybe how you handled it. And if you've especially if you come out on the other side feeling like, hey, I got through this, and it's what others want to hear about. They want to hear how someone else went through that same experience and how they handled it, because we're all going through something every single day, every single year, and those experiences are just so valuable to record. And it can be as simple as that, right? And so I think for that reason, every one of us has a story to share.
I'm thinking about sort of what you're saying, and this sort of phrase came to my mind. It's like sharing life lessons for the common good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So take us through your amazing journey. You started getting symptoms of Crohn's, which is a chronic and, as you said, often debilitating disease. And the medicines that are used can cause even more problems than they solve. So talk a little bit about your journey through this really serious and life-changing illness.
Sure. Yeah, so as you mentioned, I got really scared of what I might traditionally have to do. And just to elaborate on that, there's medicines that are traditionally prescribed are immune suppressants. And so they suppress your immune system that would normally fight off regular types of infections. And so if you don't have that and you get an infection, you're more likely to get sick. And so there's consequences, right? So you might help yourself get into what's called remission, but then you're also leaving yourself vulnerable to other types of sicknesses. And having a young family, I really just didn't feel like that was the right way for me. I really just knew that I couldn't be sick anymore to take care of my young family. And my kids, just for example, are from ages 1 to 7 now, but I had 2 at the time. And then I really just had to take a look as I was going through what I was going through. I did some research with a doctor named Dr. Mark Hyman, and some of you might be aware of his work.
Sure.
And he's just done a lot for a lot of people in the health world with these types of illnesses and others like IBS and IBD.
An inflammatory illness. Am I right about that?
Exactly. Yeah, it's inflammation in your gut essentially. And what I did was I did a detox with him. It was a 10-day detox, and that really kick-started me off. I really just had to eliminate a lot of the foods that I was eating. I learned a lot about pH in your body, and that, there's a lot of things we consume and eat that cause acidity in our body that makes it a lot harder for us to live, why we get heartburn and all that kind of stuff. So my pH was definitely way off. And then after that, I tried to subscribe to his diet he calls a pagan diet, which is like a paleo vegan diet. And it's a blend between the two. And what's part of that is, a big part of that I actually had a hard time with, especially initially, was prescribed 75% of our diet being fruits and vegetables. And for a lot of people, and myself included at the time, was like, how am I going to do that? And so, I love some good fruit and vegetables, but I just like, how can I change all? And I'm a pretty big, I'm a steak guy. I like steak and that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
So what I actually did, and at the same time as researching Dr. Hyman's stuff, I was also doing a lot of research in the just online forums and anything else I could find for people who had done something with this disease other than just take the prescribed medicine. And what I ran across in some brief forums were people who had done a lot of juicing and blending and juicing, and there's a subtle difference there. But I just went all in. I got the best juicer I could find, and my logic behind it was, I'm going to get 75% of my fruits and vegetables from blending and juicing, so I could consume and get the nutrients I needed for my body to heal. And at the same time, I knew that my body was being taxed. Every day if you're consuming a lot of food, your digestive tract's having to work pretty hard. And for someone with bowel disease, then that's not helpful. So I decided to give my body a break in that way by really not having to digest all the fibers and all that. As you juice, you're basically stripping away some of that so that you get the nutrients straight into your bloodstream and you can heal yourself more quickly. And that's exactly what happened for me. And I was taking like ginger shots and, juicing broccoli and kale and spinach. And, I was trying to mix it with things that might help it taste better too, like apples or carrots or beets.
Sure.
So that's the medicine that I used. And literally within probably 3 to 4 months of having my first symptoms, I had been seeing the doctors in between that time. I had gotten, checkups, and they've had determined later in that 3 to 4 month time frame that I had Crohn's. So they did verify that, and then it taken about a month after they gave me that diagnosis to see the gastroenterologist. And all along the way, I was sort of testing all this stuff out, and then I found like a groove that said that I was juicing and I was just on the right path, I felt. And by the time I went to see the gastroenterologist, I was totally symptom free. And as I told him that, he was totally blown away, because he said essentially he had never had anybody come into his office and tell him that they were symptom free. And so he was on my side. He was like, hey, whatever you're doing, keep it up.
Without meds.
Without meds, yeah. Yeah,
did you do anything for your other parts of your body? Because what I know about Dr. Hyman is he's also very much into stress reduction and meditating, and all the stuff we know is really great for all the other parts. Is that something that you also embraced in terms of stress reduction and sort of spiritual and emotional
Absolutely, support? Yeah. So my book, actually, you might think that the whole book talks about this, but I actually only dedicate one chapter to the health aspects. This book I just kind of described to you, the exact fruits and vegetables I digested, and, the supplements that I took, just vitamins and things like that. But the rest of the book really talks about the mental side of things, the mindset shifts that had to take place. And I did prescribe to some of the Dr. Hyman's, the stress relief recommendations he had, just simple things, even like taking a hot bath and going into the sauna and just relieving that stress. And as you said, meditation. But like I said, the rest of the book really talks about the shifts in my mindset, because the backstory behind all this was before I had gotten sick, literally probably a month or two, I told myself I was going under so much stress, and I'll get to that in a minute, that I was telling myself, I hope I don't get a stomach illness of some kind. I remember literally telling myself that.
Wow. So you sort of auto-suggested to your body somehow that might be a possibility for you.
Exactly. Yep. It was very clear, and I remember myself just thinking that, and I wasn't dwelling on it, but I remember thinking it, over several different occasions, in a maybe a few week time frame. And I had gone through a lot of stress basically before that, because I was moving from California to Iowa. I had sold a business I was running in California. My second child was about to be born. I was starting a new job. My wife and I were trying to build a custom home. So all these huge things were happening right as I got sick. So definitely believe stress is and that mindset is something that can really help you or hurt you, right? So that is something I talk about in my book. And what I realized to try to heal myself and keep myself from getting sick and this disease, they will say that stress does flare up these types of issues. While they won't really admit or say that stress is the ultimate cause, I don't think they really just have enough information to know. But I do believe a lot of it was how I was treating myself, how I was eating, and then also the stress and the mindset that I had. And I let that stress overwhelm me. And I had to take a step back, as I mentioned, and really start to change like how I handled stress. And some of the steps I'll mention to you, I guess, that I had to go through in trying to help myself change that mindset. And what really helped me are the 10 steps that I talk about in the book. So stuff like, all right, I had to take a look and say, what's going on in my life, evaluating that. And the first step is discovery. And I think a lot of us don't necessarily take the time for that. And I come from a very highly technical background, and a lot of major corporations, they spend months and months in discovery to say, hey, where are we at now and where we want to go? And I think
like an assessment of sorts.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times this will be a big portion of multi-million-dollar projects where you're saying, all right, let's take a look at the landscape of what we've got. What are we working with, and how is it not working, and how do we want to change it to push ourselves forward? And I think that big companies aren't the only ones that we should be doing that. We should individually be doing that ourselves. And for me, it obviously took, getting really sick, and it almost forced it to happen for me. But I don't think each of us should have to wait to get sick to do that, right?
Hello, Zesties. I want to tell you about one of my all-time favorite exercise and stress reduction tools, which I am really relying on during this quarantine. But I've sung its praises for years. The benefits are seemingly endless. It's great for toning and strengthening muscles. It improves your lymph system, your metabolism. It helps with joint pain and balance. And it's even used by NASA astronauts because it's such an efficient way to exercise. And if you're older or you're worried about your balance, you can order a stabilizer bar to hang on to. I'm talking about my Needak Rebounder mini trampoline. I put on my music and I have my own dance party. Because for me, exercise needs to be fun and invigorating. Otherwise, I don't want to do it. Now is not the time for the philosophy of no pain, no gain, because we're in enough pain. This is a way to feel good and energized and have fun. It really does help mood as well. And I like that Needak is made in the USA and it is really solid. I've had mine for 15 years and it's still in great shape. The Needak Rebounder will help us get through this quarantine in better shape mentally and physically. And there's also a model that folds up if space is an issue. One of my clients puts it on her driveway and uses it while she's watching her kids during the quarantine. Anyway, I can't recommend NEDAC rebounders enough. They are a worthwhile investment in your health and overall well-being, especially now. If you are interested in a mini trampoline, please don't buy a cheap one. Those can be actually dangerous, and it is really worth investing in a good quality one. And right now, if you use the coupon code just for Zestful Aging listeners, the code is Zestful, they are going to include a free cover for you. So go to needak.com. It's NEEDAK.com. And if you have any questions, you can contact me at zestfulaging.com. I really am their biggest fan. Do you think that being a man, and also in business and sort of moving and shaking in those circles, is that sort of an environment that the self-assessment is not necessarily reinforced or talked about? I think for women, it's a little bit more on the radar, but I'm just thinking about the worlds where you were traveling, highly technical, mathematical, doing all this high level business. I mean, I don't want to stereotype it, but it does sound like, I'm going to guess your colleagues weren't saying, hey, let's take a step back and really evaluate our lives and maybe do a little deep breathing.
Yeah, I'm sure you're absolutely right. I think for us men, I mean, my wife was, say into self-development a lot earlier than even me. And she almost took her to really guide me in that direction to say, all right, Aaron, you're missing out over here. You need to reevaluate how you're thinking and the beliefs you have. And yeah, for sure. I think you're right on with that.
And what is success, right? I mean, I think that for men, it's just so much about, I'm making money, I'm building a custom house, things are good, but at a price, at a cost of just being on all the time and not allowing yourself maybe to rest or, have like a state of the union with yourself, what's working, what's not, how come my stomach's hurting, how come I haven't seen my friends, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's easy to do, especially as you, not only in business, but as I became a father, I almost felt that pressure even more to support, provide for my family, and, just be there. Even, I had to spend a lot of time working. I had to spend a lot of time, felt like I wanted to spend a lot of time with my family as well, and just balancing all that out. And it became quite overwhelming, right? And something has to give at some point. And I think a lot of times our bodies tell us, hey, something's not working. Right.
The body doesn't lie, right? We can kid ourselves, but the body tells the truth.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. As I stepped forward through the process, though, I took a step back as I got through it, and I didn't realize some of the things I had to realize and change even then. But when I started to write the book, I realized, hey, I had to not only discover what was going on, I had to have some sort of passion for changing that and making a shift. And for me, my passion and desire became almost life consuming, like it had to happen. But for each of us, I think we need to find what's driving us and find that why of what we're reaching for at the end, and that will create that passion that will help you get there, right? And then from there, you need to believe that it's possible. I think that was a big stumbling block for me in the beginning, was to say, hey, not very many people I couldn't find really anybody doing what I was thinking of doing, and just to have the belief that it was possible. If I didn't believe, then I probably would have just went to the doctor and say, hey, give me some medicine to fix me, right? But I had to believe that it was possible to even try to research and find the solution. And again, this just applies to our everyday life. If we have something in our lives we want to do and are passionate about it, and if we just don't have the belief that it's possible, we probably won't even start. So I think
So
we have to.
how do you understand that you're the kind of person who thought, I'm going to try a different way, which was not, that trail had not been made before. You were doing something radically different than what anybody else might have done, has said, oh, these medicines are terrible, but I have to take them. What is it about you? Are you a rebellious sort or a DIY kind of guy that you just said, you know what, I'm going to try something different?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it comes a lot from how I was raised and the experiences I had, a combination of the two, which a lot of things do in our lives. But first of all, I grew up in a homeschool environment, which I think really helped me in the end, because as I even went through college and all that, I really was pretty self-sufficient. Like I always had to try to just figure whatever out I needed to. And so from a DIY perspective, for sure, I was like always researching. If I wanted to figure out something, I mean, when Google came along, it was like my very best friend, right? So
Your private reference librarian.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it is for a lot of people, but that information was gold, right? And so just coming from that background of really being self-taught, I think helped me out a lot. And then as I grew up, I was very into working out. I played on very high level soccer teams, and in college I did bodybuilding, and then as I mentioned before, I had a gym. So I had a big feeling in my my gut, you might say, that hey, the body can do a lot and it can heal itself. And I just kind of had that belief internally that there has to be some other way. And I had watched some documentaries that had influenced me before that as well, where they had done juicing. That also was another reason I chose that. So some of the information I had already had absorbed really helped me push to believe that it was possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. So talk a little bit to us about what your days look like in terms of how you've integrated some of these more healthy habits.
Yeah, absolutely. So one might think that, hey, I went through all this and I'm doing this exact thing now, and they might cringe to think that all I can do is juice and blend, but that's not the case. As I got better, I started to introduce foods back into my diet, and I can pretty much eat anything I want now. And I really just try to maintain a healthier lifestyle from a diet perspective. And today I do a lot of juicing and blending still. So I'll make a juice. I'll juice a ginger shot. I'll blend some fruit and some protein powder and some spirulina and put it in a blender and have that almost every single day. So these are the types of just healthy habits now that I have, including the working out that I do, which I believe is just a massive part of allowing yourself to be healthy enough, to have the energy enough to do the work that you want to do, whatever passions you have in your life. So those are the big keys that I have. I think otherwise I do still take like hot baths. I do that a lot. I go in the sauna almost every single day. These are the kind of stress relievers I have. I started meditating every single day. And then I also podcast every single day with self-help authors, that I think is a huge bit of medicine for me mentally, to just see other people really believing and doing amazing things. And that's really been a big part of just helping me get that dose of encouragement for myself. While I encourage the listeners, it's encouraging me to just talk to some of these amazing people, as you do as well, Nicole.
Mm-hmm. I love that's part of your therapy, is connecting with other people who have been through really hard times and have come out the other side and demonstrated resilience.
Exactly. Yep.
I love that. That's gold.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you've experienced some of the same things on your show.
I have, and I often say, my life was pretty good before, but podcasting has just enriched it 100-fold because I get to meet these fascinating people from all over the world I never would have had the chance to talk to. So to me, it's like just the gifts keep on coming. So
Yeah,
that's
it's incredible.
wonderful. It's funny that you mentioned that because, as a therapist, I was thinking, I wondered if it was difficult to listen every single day to people's stories that are, about hard times, about challenges. You're talking ultimately, I think, if you're saying, legacy, you're talking about facing your own mortality. And I'm wondering about, is there a part of that feels like you sometimes need to take a break and just walk on the beach and look for shells or something?
Well, I do live by the beach, so I enjoy that.
I know, that's why I brought it up.
I still do that. I definitely make a habit of getting down to the beach. I guess I missed that part of my therapy, which is another big dream and goal I had, was to get back to the beach where I grew up in California and chose a different side of the coast. But it's beautiful and a big part of what keeps me really excited about life. But yeah, I think we all kind of get to that point where, hey, anything we're doing, if we do a lot of it, can sometimes feel, a bit more like work than enjoyment. But I really, really enjoy it. And there are a lot of tragic stories, for sure. I won't downplay that. But there just are so many others that are just coming from a place of hope. Like most of them we're talking about the hopeful side of things a lot of the times and all the things that they did to help them through it, and just hearing how they've helped other people even save lives by writing the books that they have, with the comments that they get. It's just so encouraging. So I think I try to really focus on all that positivity to really also get the stories out there to hopefully help others who might hear them.
Mm-hmm. That's the part, right? You're leaving your legacy in a sense every day as you're sharing that, and it goes out into the world. And, once it leaves your podcast, you have no idea of the influence, the positive influence that might have.
Yep, exactly. And I think a book's the same way, even recording videos and, all the social media that can be done and as well. I just have probably a special place in my heart for getting it on paper, and there's something to it. People really, I guess they trust it maybe just a little bit more. That person has spent the time to write it down.
Mm-hmm. So for our audience, some of whom, have big stories to tell. I know I interviewed the Alls authors, and that's their whole thing, is reading and writing about stories of being a family member with someone who has dementia or Alzheimer's, what that's like. I mean, that's their whole mission. What would you say to people who want to tell their story, but they really, they just don't even know where to start?
Yeah, absolutely. And I ask this sort of question on my show as well. What's helped authors get through and writing their book? And a lot of times for them, it's been some kind of support, and feeling like they don't have to do it all on their own, because it can be a lot, getting your cover. How do you publish? How should I write this? What's the outline? All these little things can become overwhelming, and yeah, you need someone to guide you through that, whether that's a course or a coach. And I think I would just encourage people to not believe in some of the myths out there that, hey, a book's got to be long, or that it's got to have everything in the world about a topic. A lot of times we think that, hey, we're writing a book, so we got to write this big thing that's got to cover every single aspect of this topic. And really, that's why they create multiple editions, right? And so
that's why they're series.
Yeah, exactly. And I would just say that I think believing that your book can help others, and finding a reason why will probably be the biggest driver. I would say write about something you're either passionate about or something that you've overcome, because those will come more quickly to you. And then there's simple, really tricks. Like one trick I'll leave you really with is if you can write an outline that really just describes some sort of problem, something that you went through, and then just walk people through that from step A to step, C, D, or E, whatever it might be. Keep it short, 3 to 5 bullet points.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you do is talk through those steps and actually record yourself. And what you can do is take that that recording and get it transcribed into text, and you can send it off to an editor who clean it up, and you can have a great first draft at that point. And
Wow, I love that idea.
Yeah, so that's an amazing way. The first draft is always the biggest hurdle for people, and if you can get that done, those steps will probably get you 80 to 90% there through your book.
Oh, that's a great idea. I remember reading about Brene Brown and how she had such a hard time sitting and writing. So what she would do is invite her friends to a retreat place somewhere in Texas where she lives, and she would have them ask her questions, and she'd start talking, and they would write down what she said, and they would have this interaction back and forth, and she's talking to her best friend. So she's, talking about all the stuff she's known for, the shame, the vulnerability, talking. Then she took all those notes, and that became what she worked off of to write her book. She could not just sit down and say, okay, here's what I want to say.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
there's some ways to do it that feel easier, maybe more spontaneous, maybe more personal, and then sort of funnel them into a readable book.
Exactly. That's the trick.
That's so cool. So where can people find you, Aaron?
Yeah, there's a couple places. So I have the university I mentioned at writeabookuniversity.com.
Okay.
And there's a free 4-lesson video course to get you started there if you feel like you're wanting to share that story into 2020. And there's my daily podcast I mentioned, dailyauthors.com.
Okay, dailyauthors.com. That's great. I give you a lot of credit for doing a daily podcast. How long are the episodes?
Similar to yours, about 30 minutes long. Some of them are 15 minutes, some of them are 40 minutes, so somewhere in between there.
Wow, you do have energy. That's great. And I'm sure a lot of editing support and help, because, you can't do it alone. It's a lot of work.
Absolutely, yeah. I've tried to outsource a lot of that work so I can focus on having the energy, as you mentioned, for the interviews.
Yeah, that's great. It has been such a pleasure to hear your story today, Aaron. I love your message, and I think people are really going to be inspired by it and hopefully start writing down stories of their lives to share with others so we can all have access to that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. I really appreciate you having me on the show. It was an absolute pleasure, and just thank you again for all that you're doing.
Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share it with some of your friends. I love to hear from my listeners. Send me an email at NicoleChristina.com. It's no secret that everyone's feeling pretty restless and unsettled right now. Our lives are upside down, and the future is feeling pretty uncertain. But if you're anything like me, organizing my stuff can help me feel a little calmer. It's something I can do to help me feel a little more in control and in charge of my own life. If you think decluttering could help you feel better and you could use a little assistance with that, check out the online course I've developed with professional organizer and designer Carrie Luderin. It's called Too Much Stuff. And too much stuff is different from other courses or articles or guidance you may have used up. We give you clear steps to deal with the clutter and the tools to help you face the overwhelming feelings and the emotions that come up when we're going through our clutter. And a lot of those emotions are just feeling anxious or guilty or just basically flooded with a lot of different confusing feelings. The course is really practical, it's realistic, the lessons are short and punchy, and they're really manageable. We're not trying to set you up for some long exploratory, super in-depth, burdensome experience. We want something really helpful for you right now. We all need help with our anxiety, so being surrounded by more calm and less chaos can really help. So now's a good time to clear out the clutter so we can focus on what's really important in our lives. So find out more at zestfulaging.com. You'll see more about this under the web courses tab. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email at zestfulaging@gmail.com. Thanks so much. And stay tuned next week for another interview with a fascinating and inspiring guest.